Hello guys and girls, this is Kentucky. Today let's take a closer look on the Blood Death Knight. I think this received several buffs and nerfs, but however it is still the best tank in battle for Azeroth because it can provide much self-healing, it can provide reasonable DPS, and it has a very lot of defensive tools. So let's take a look on the spellbook first, what's changed. Dancing Groove weapon is now on a 2-minute cooldown. It is a 1-minute cut, so it is a huge reduction. And of course, it is up for only 8 seconds, not 18. It's just also a huge cut, but you have more frequent access to one of your main DPS and defensive cooldown. So basically, that's just a buff for it, mainly for good players, because you can have, of course, use Dancing Groove weapon more often. Moving on, the strike received increased healing, but its guaranteed minimum 7% of maximum health is much less than in the previous expansion. So again, if you're a good player, it is a buff for you. If you're not, it is a nerf. Death's Advance replaces the Race Walk. In the next expansion, it is up for 8 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. It increases your maximum movement speed, and you cannot be slowed below 100% of normal movement speed, and you are immune to forced movement effects such as knockbacks, roots, and stuff. You cannot be slowed passively below 70% of normal speed, which is really important. So that's just a great addition to the toolkit of the DK. Gorfin's Grasp has been nerfed. It is now on a 2-minute cooldown. It is much longer than in the previous expansion, but it is now 15-yard radius, not 10, so it's just a buff. Basically, overall, it is a nerf for the Gorfin's Grasp. Moving on, Heart Strike. It is now basically slows enemies far less. It's 20% instead of 50, and it won't generate bonus runic power per target hit. As I remember, in Legion it generated, but right now it doesn't, only with a talent. Moving on, Marrowland hasn't been changed, but Bone Shield has been changed because it doesn't flat out reduces the damage you take, but instead it increases your armor, so it won't be useful against magic attacks, only against physical attacks. Moving on, Raise Ally now costs 30 runic power, which is a shame, but we can't do anything about it. Rune Forging has been slightly changed. Rune of Razor Eyes is now causes 8% additional extra weapon damage. It's good because you can do more damage with it, but I think we will still use the Rune of the Fallen Crusader. So it basically doesn't really matter. Vampiric Blood has been a victim of a heavy nerf, because all of its effects have been cut by 20%, so it's just heals, increases your maximum health by only 30% instead of 50, and increases all healing and absorption received by 30% instead of 50, so it's just a huge cut. And finally, the Veteran of the Third War passive have been buffed. It increases stamina by 10 more percent and armor by 5 more percent, which is great because passively you will take less damage and you will have more HP, which is great, and it really is a useful change for the DK to be a much more reliable tank. Moving on to the talent section, let's take a look on the first row. It is Heartbreaker, Blooddrinker, and Runestrike. Heartbreaker makes Heartstrike generate 2 additional runic power per target hit. It is basically useful only in AoE situations. Blooddrinker is a huge channeled heal and damage to the target, which is good for single target. It is on a 30-second cooldown, so you've got really frequent access to it, and you can move, parry, dodge, and use defensive abilities, for example, Rune Tap, Icebound Fortitude, and so on, while channeling this ability, which makes it a awesome single target and awesome Mythic Plus tool. Runestrike is pretty much a weaker version than the other two talents because, of course, it generates runes, sorry, and it deals a respective amount of damage, and it has 2 charge on a 1 minute recharge time, which is a shame. Because if you had more frequent access to rune strikes, then you could just generate much more runes, and you could just use much more heart strikes and marrow rends. But in this way, I think that rune strike is basically just too rarely be used to be good. However, it could be good when you have to emergency generate runes, so it has potential, but I think that for single target and Mythic Plus, Bloodinker is way better, and for extensive AoE, Heartbreaker is the better option in this tier. Next tier is Rapid Decomposition, Hemostasis, and Consumption. Rapid Decomposition just increases the number of ticks Blood Plague and Death and Decay deals. They deal damage 15% more often. Not bad, but both Hemostasis and Consumption are way better options. Consumption is good against a lot of targets, because it strikes all enemies in front of you on a 45-second cooldown, and it deals a small amount of physical damage, but it heals you for 100% of the damage dealt. It's good against at least 8 plus or 10 plus targets, so it should be used on heavy AoE situations only, because for single target it heals you 700 and you get 35,000 HP, so it's basically almost less than 0.5% of your max HP, which is like bullshit. Hemostasis is a great option until like 8-9 targets, because then Consumption flat out became better because it heals more. Hemostasis makes your blood boil, increases the damage and healing of your next death strike by 8%, and it stacks up to 5 times. You could think that it is good until 5 targets, because you can't stack over it, and then Consumption flat out became better. But the increased healing and of course the damage, and then through it the blood shield that it produces through your mastery, is just way better than Consumption until, like, as I say, 8, 9 or 10 targets. So above 8, 9 or 10 targets, Consumption is slightly better than Hemostasis, but until then Hemostasis is just way better than Consumption. So I suggest taking Hemostasis almost all the situations, just like Bloodrinker. Moving on, the next the next options are Fall Bulwark, Ushery, and Tombstone. Ushery, I think, is rarely be able to be used as a good talent, because while you have at least 5 Bone Shield charges, the cost of Death Strike is reduced by 5 runic power, and additionally your maximum runic power is increased by 10. It's not a good talent, because you will rarely have more than 5 Bone Shield charges. So it's not really a helpful talent. Fall Bulwark is just a flat-out stamina increase or health increase for each Bone Shield charges. It's really good if you like the passive options, and if you like to play it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more complicated way, then you should choose Tombstone, because you will consume up to 5 Bone Shield charges, and for each charge consumed you gain runic powers and an absorption shield, which is 6% of your max HP per Bone Shield charges consumed. So it's 30% of your max HP shield. Absorption shield for 8 seconds, which is a great damage mitigation tool. So if you don't like the passive option, then definitely Tombstone is way better than Fall Bulwark. But if you don't like to play a little bit harder, then you should choose Fall Bulwark. The next tier is Will of the Necropolis, Anti-Magic Barrier, and Rune Tap. Anti-Magic Barrier further increases the absorption of Anti-Magic Shell, increases its duration and the amount absorbed as well, and of course reduces its cooldown. It's the best option against any magic damage situation. Moving on, Will of the Necropolis reduces the damage taken below 35% health by 35%. It is a great talent if you would like to choose the passive option, but Rune Tap has much more use. You can also use to reduce damage above 35% health as well. it is 5% less damage reduction, and it is only up for 4 seconds every 25 seconds. Of course, it has 2 charges, but overall, I think Rune Tap is much more useful than the Will of the Necropolis if you can play a little bit complicated style of Death Knights. 75 roll, Grip of the Dead, Tightening Grasp and Wraithfolk. Tightening Grasp reduces the remaining cooldown of Golfrid's Grasp by 30 seconds, which is a great tool. It's a great utility. However, Wraithfolk is, I think, flat out better because it just gives you another movement speed option. It increases your movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds, and you cannot be slowed below that. So you will just move very fast and cannot be slowed. It's just great. It also removes root effects, so I think it's just an awesome tool. Grip of the Dead also very good. Most likely you will use it in necrotic weeks when you have to kite the mobs really frequently, because Death and Decay reduces the movement speed of enemies within its area by 90%, decaying by 10% every second, which is a great thing. And of course, with the Crimson Scourge proc, you have more frequent access to your Death and Decay, and you can, of course, put down this slow like really often. The next tier is Voracious, Bloodworms, and Mark of Blood. Bloodworms is currently works too randomly, so I do not suggest taking it in any scenario. So because you will just randomly generate a Bloodworm, which will after 15 seconds burst and heal you, but maybe it will heal you always when you're on max HP, and when you're in a low HP you won't really proc this, and you won't really just receive any healing from this, so that's basically a bad talent for me. Mark of Blood is a great debuff to your tank, to your target, sorry. I think it should be used mostly in raids, because the marked enemy, its damaging auto attack will also heal their victim for 2% of the victim's max HP. So if you are tanking the boss, you will heal for 2% of your max HP for every auto attack you take from the boss, debuffed by Mark of Blood. But if you're not tanking actively, the other tank will be healed for 2% of his maximum HP. If he's a druid, for example, this is a huge amount of heal at every auto attack that the boss does. So basically it is a very useful tool for raids, and Voracious is just could be flat out better, because Death Strike grants you 15% leech for 6 seconds, which is a huge amount of leech. I think Voracious should be your go-to options in most situations, but Mark of Blood could be better in certain raiding situations. So basically you have to choose between these two options. Level 100 of Purgatory, Red Thirst, and Bone Storm. Red Thrust just reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 1 second per 10 runic power spent. I don't think this is a good talent because of 2 reasons. One, that Vampiric Blood has been nerfed. It's not that big of an impact now than before. And of course, you have very much defensive tools, for example, Rune Tap, Icebound Fortitude, Dancing Rune Weapon, which you can use when Vampiric Blood is not available. So basically, it's not too big of an impact to use Red Thrust. Purgatory just saves your lives. It's the best talent, I think, passively in this tier. And basically in any tier that Purgatory is in, is the best tier. Is the best talent. So you can pair it up with any other talent. It's just flat out be better passively in all situations. However, Bone Storm could be very useful in Mythic Plus if you are certain that you won't be use Purgatory and you won't die, then you should use Bone Storm, because it will just drain your runic power, and for each 10 runic power spent, it is up for 1 more second, and it deals a respective amount of AoE damage, and it just heals you for a huge amount. It heals you for 3% of your maximum HP every time it deals damage. which means that if you are just dealing damage for 3 targets, it is 3 times 3% of your max HP. So it's just a huge heal. So basically, if there is not so many healing required, then you should use Bone Storm. And if you will have use of this Purgatory thing, if you need it, then you should choose it all the time, because it is better all the time than the other talents in this tier. So let's take a little brief look on how it plays and what are the single target damaging numbers. Basically, you will have to apply the Blood Plague, you will have to generate runes, apply bone shields to yourself, and of course maintain your blood shield with the Death Strike. If you need, use your Blood Drinker to just heal yourself. At Crimson Scourge proc, use your Descent Decay, generate as many runic power as possible, use defensive cooldowns if needed, use anything if needed, and also refresh your Blood Plague with Death Caress, or if needed with Blood Boil. If you have access to Blood Boil, just use it. And basically this is how the Blood Decay just plays out. I think it's a great way to play. I really enjoy it. As you can see, melee is our top hitting ability, so with the Voracious talent, of course it's a leech effect, we will just deal a massive amount of leech healing. And Death Strike and Blood Drinker are, as you can see, roughly the same, which is great because Blood Drinker is a huge heal in this way and a huge damage. Of course, Death Strike is a huge heal and damage as well. And there are the other ones of our spells. So I think that the Blood Decay is in a pretty good place, and hope you will also enjoy it, and see you in the next video, which is the Frost Decay. Until then, bye bye.